is hard! There are so many great movies this year. How am I supposed to narrow it down to 10? I've seen 54 movies from 2024. More than 30 of them have been phenomenal. Even my 30th favorite movie of this year would have been my favorite movie of any other year. But if I can narrow it down, in 10th place is Transformers 1. The animation is great. This is genuinely the best origin story in decades. The next competitor for the best origin story ever would probably be Wicked, which did come out more than 2 decades ago, which still makes Transformers 1 the best origin story in decades. But I would say this is a better origin story than even Wicked! And the political themes of this movie are just so nuanced that I couldn't stop thinking about it for weeks. Like, I was at Comic-Con and just constantly thinking about Transformers 1. In 9th place is the Garfield movie. Now, I made a whole, 10-minute video about this earlier this year. It's great. It's phenomenal. It is funny as all get out. It's from the director of The Emperor's New Groove, and you can really feel it. Oh my gosh, he has his groove on when he's making this movie. That pun did not work. It is a really solid comedy heist. Yes, the movie straight up calls itself a heist multiple times. It's so much fun to watch the heisting itself. It feels so much like Chicken Run, and I had a huge Garfield hyperfixation when I was a kid. Of course I'm gonna like this movie. It's great! In 8th place is Smile 2. Now, I should preface this with, I don't actually like horror. I like horror movies because I really like what horror does to movies. It gives people so much more creativity in both the subject matter and the camera work. Like, you see some of the best camera work in horror movies, but I don't actually like the feeling of horror itself. When I'm watching a horror movie and just feeling the horror, all I'm thinking is, fine, I guess I have to feel this so that I can experience the great parts of this movie. Now, can we stop doing the horror and get back to the great camera work? But Smile 2 is the first time that I enjoyed the horror sections. And that's largely because all of the horror sections had incredible camera work. Like, this movie doesn't work if the camera work isn't phenomenal. Like, a lot of the horror of this movie comes from the POV shots, comes from the jump cuts, comes from the back and forth to watching one perspective and then another perspective and then the first perspective, and things have completely changed the first perspective. A lot of the horror of this movie is in the camera, and it's incredible. That first opening shot is like a 5-minute long one take that involves the cameraman jumping out a window. There's a scene where the camera is upside down in a normal B-roll footage of New York sort of situation, where the camera is flying through the New York City skyline, flips right side up as it's flying, goes into a window, and that's where we start the scene. That's so cool! And just all of the scenes where people are looking directly at the camera as they're giving the smiles are so good. And all of the incredible lighting of the concert situations and the feeling that you never really know what's actually happening. I spent weeks after this movie going, wait, what actually happened? What was diegetic and what was non-diegetic? Because the horror of this movie allows them to play with diegesis in ways that no other movie gets to. Gosh, this was incredible. I kind of want to go back and watch Smile 1 and Laura Hasn't Slept, because I watched Smile 2 with absolutely zero context. I didn't even know what the Smile Demon was. I saw the trailer, said, wow, that's going to be some amazing camera work. I have to go see that. And I'm so glad I did. In 7th place is Lift. This is everything I want in a heist movie. They did it! They checked every single box so successfully. You see, Lift is from the director of The Italian Job, one of the absolute classics of the genre. The Other Italian Job. There we go. One of the absolute classics of the genre. And it really shows. You can feel that this is from the same director, and it's just... it's beautiful. It's everything I wanted. Wow! In 6th place. Wait. How did that make it on the list? Was that a typo? That doesn't feel right. Okay, The Secret Life of a Dominatrix is a very obscure to be original, that feels like a Lifetime movie or a Hallmark movie. It is so obscure, it doesn't even have its own Wikipedia page. It didn't show up on the list of American movies of 2024 Wikipedia article. It just isn't there because no one knows this movie exists. But this is genuinely some of the best representation of my community that I have ever seen in my life. You see, I'm currently studying how kink is portrayed in film, like everything from the bad, like 50 Shades, to the good, like Love and Leashes, and this is perfect. Oh my gosh, they did everything right! They did everything that the community has been begging for a decade! They had very clear consent and negotiations. They had people actively mentoring people to teach them the right way to do this stuff. They actively said, out loud, kink is a community about consent and communication. Like, they just said the words out loud, and then they kept saying the words out loud, and showing everything being very consensual, and showing things being very loving, and very sensual, and beautiful. Like, the kink scenes in this movie are some of the best cinematography of the year, because they really wanted to show how beautiful this is to the main character. Oh, right, context. This is a movie about a stay-at-home wife who is discovering her passions in life and coming out of her shell and finding new purpose and passion in life through the kink community without her husband knowing. Which is where it feels like it might not be entirely consensual. They do go into a little bit about the difference between poly and cheating, which is great. Like, polyamory isn't even a kink, but it's so heavily tied to the kink community that they couldn't do a good representation of the community without talking about polyamory. And they go so much further. Like, they show the community as a community. That's something that I've been wanting so bad in these movies. They keep presenting the community as just this group of strangers who don't really know each other, who get together once a month for a party, and nobody knows anybody's names, and nobody knows each other outside of these situations, and just pretend that they don't exist. And no! This is a community of people who love each other, and this movie really shows it. Like, the main character makes friendship bracelets for her kink friends. It's beautiful, and it shows little treats that I absolutely loved that nobody else was specifically asking for, but that I had kind of had in the back of my head of like, hey, this would be cool. Like, they have a kink fight scene where two characters who were both about to do kink together, who suddenly the negotiations broke down, the consent broke down, and suddenly the girl realizes, I have to get out of this room at all costs. And the guy's thinking, I have to keep the girl in this room at all costs. And they both start to use their kink equipment and their kink skills to fight each other. I've never seen that before! This feels like it shouldn't be in my top 10. This is a very trashy, simple, Hallmark, Lifetime-style movie. But it's the best representation of my community, and it just made me so happy! In 5th place is Borderlands. I know, this is where you're really questioning my taste, but just wait until you get to 4th place, then you're gonna really question my taste. But Borderlands, oh my gosh! Y'all, this was so fun! Like, I get why people didn't like this movie. I understand if you didn't like this movie. I love this movie. Oh my, I haven't even played the games, which is probably why I love the movie, because from what I hear, this movie had, like, nothing to do with the games. But it was just so fun, and I knew I wasn't going into a good movie. I knew I was going into a movie that was pretty standard, pretty schlock, pretty stock, basic space opera. But I knew it was gonna be fun. And oh my gosh, I was grinning ear to ear the entire movie. I think there were like a total of 2 seconds where I wasn't smiling and having the time of my life. Wow, I had fun. But now you need to really question my taste, because number 4 was Argyle. I know, people hated this movie. I don't entirely understand why people hated this movie so much, but I know people did hate this movie. Your taste is valid. Your feelings about movies are valid. My feelings about movies are also valid. My taste in movies is valid. And oh my gosh, I just plain love Matthew Vaughn movies. Matthew Vaughn's camera work is so freaking good and so beautiful. To this day, Argyle has some of my favorite scenes of the year. Gas canister dance scene and the scene where she's skating on oil are some of my favorite scenes of the year. The opening scene would have been one of my favorite scenes of the year, except I was 5 minutes late to the showing. And I missed the opening scene, but watching it back on YouTube, oh my gosh, that thing is gorgeous. And that's the main thing with Argyle, is that Matthew Vaughn clearly has more of an eye for visuals than an eye for story, and he clearly just loves spy movies. He is indulging in every spy movie trope every second. Like, there's a shot where the camera is pushing in on a rifle on the mantelpiece, which, by the way, is the exact words that Chekhov used when he described the concept of Chekhov's gun, is if there's a gun on the mantle in Act 1, it must go off in Act 3. So they push in on a rifle on the mantle in Act 1. And you can see them pushing in and looking up as if they are looking up in adoration at this rifle and thinking, yes! We get to do a literal Chekhov's gun! And you can just feel so much love and self-indulgence and fun in this movie. My only complaint is that Henry Cavill isn't in it enough. But that's my complaint about most movies. In third place is The Substance. Now, I know I just said that I don't like horror. I like horror movies. I like the movies that horror produces. I don't like the feeling of horror. But I might like body horror, I found out this year, because wow, this was immaculate. Sorry, wrong movie. In second place, yes, there's somehow something higher than The Substance, is Boy Kills World. I don't know how Moritz Moore was able to get this made as his first feature with a $20 million budget from Lionsgate and had just absolutely no restraint whatsoever. This movie is the most overkill I have ever seen in a movie. Boy Kills World is basically John Wick in the style of Scott Pilgrim. It's John Wick as a comedy. Boy Kills World is about a deaf guy named Boy who decides to go kill the world. And he succeeds. Like, at the end of the movie, there are two characters left alive. Not two named characters, two characters. There is Boy and one other person. And it's not that the stunts are great, it's that the timing is incredible. The timing makes everything fun. It's not like John Wick where it's this very slow neon noir that's just plodding along. No, everything is laugh out loud, raucous, hilarious. Just because of the timing of everything, and because of the camera work. Like, this, to me, is the gold standard for your camera interacting with your stunts. You can tell that Moritz Moore is thinking really, really hard about how his camera is going to interact with every single stunt. What makes Boy Kills World so great is how much sheer audacity it has, and how much love it has for the art form of cinema. Despite not being a movie about cinema, it is just so big and over the top and in your face, you can't help but love it. In first place is The Wild Robot. This movie is beautiful. It's gorgeous. Every single shot looks like a freaking painting. You could frame any of this and... oh, right, there's an entire YouTube channel about that. This movie looks gorgeous, but it also feels gorgeous. Every single scene, you can just feel the emotions so deeply, and there were 5 different times that I actually cried in the theater. It's amazing, it's beautiful, it's incredible. Everyone should see this. Now, I have a lot of honorable mentions because there were just so many great movies that didn't make the top 10. Follow me on Patreon, that's where the 11 through 20 is going to be, at Movies and Heists. Speaking of which, special thanks to these patrons for helping to fund my heist movie. That's where all of the Patreon money goes. Thank you for following for more movie love.